Chelsea 2, Burnley 2. A performance at Stamford Bridge full of the kind of grit, determination and effort that we all thought this team was incapable of. A ridiculous penalty, an even more ridiculous sending off. But after that double injustice, Burnley fought with 10 men for the entire second half and not only came back to equalise twice, but almost won the game. It was a performance to be proud of and a result that raises the question, could we? Could we really somehow save this season and stay in the Premier League? We'll discuss all that and more on this episode of From the Be-All End.
Jimmy McElroy to Upton. Go.
Well, welcome to this post-Chelsea episode of From the Be-All End. I'm Simon Evans, and joining me is Paul Woodhouse in Cleveland, and Justin Connolly, who is back from Stamford Bridge after his epic bus journey down there. We've got to start with you, Justin. We've seen some of your photos. We've had a little flavour, but what a time to pick a trip to an away game in London.
Probably the best away trip of the season so far, I would say. I don't know. It was a fantastic day. I mean, I have to say, even the bus journey was all right. We had a little stop at the service station on the M6 toll road there, full of Clarets, showing the colours. Back on the bus down to Stamford Bridge. I mean, it was a great away end to be in, I have to say. I was texting you a lot during the game saying, "Can you hear us?" And you were saying no, and I was like astounded because we seemed in the thick of it to be making an absolute racket in what was, I have to say, a very Etihad-esque atmosphere at Stamford Bridge. I know they've had to watch a load of rubbish this season as well, haven't they? It's quite difficult to get up for a game when you've been subjected to that all season. But they were very, very passive. But it felt to me like we were shaking the place to the foundations. But sometimes this don't come across on TV, does it?
It did, though, didn't it? Because about a second after you sent that message saying, "Can you hear us? Can you hear us?" Like this massive "No Nay Never" came booming out of my TV.
Yeah. You sometimes do wonder where they manipulate stuff like that, because you know that daft tune they play at the start. I don't know what it's called, but there's a that one. Yeah. There's quite an obscene sort of counter chant that the Burnley fans were doing to it. And when I saw it on I was going to say Top of the Pops, then it's not called that, is it? It's called Match of the Day. It was Top of the Pops for us, though, wasn't it? No, when I saw it on Match of the Day last night, it was like you couldn't hear any of that at all. And I just think I bet they've just turned us down to make us sound like we're not really there, but we were there and we did make a racket, and it was an absolutely fantastic day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
some of the hateful BBC there with that volume control turning us down.
Well, I'm sure we're going to get our tinfoil hats on for the penalty decision as well. But I think a lot's been said about that, hasn't it? I mean, I think Bellamy said, didn't he, at half time, that decision, those two decisions, the penalty and the sending off, seemed to galvanise the team in the second half. But I don't know what I mean. As I said before, if you're expecting any analysis of the game from me, I have no idea what went on the pitch, apart from when the ball hit the back of the net those two times. I thought in the first half, we were the best team by far, especially first 20 minutes. We were well on top. So I'm not sure I'm buying this. It was the sending off that galvanised us in that second half to get. I think we would have beaten them. I think we could have beaten them. I think we should have beaten them. I think at this stage of the season, if you're going to a place like that, I know they've not had a great season, but if you're coming away from Stamford Bridge with a point when you've been down to 10 men, and you're a little bit disappointed you didn't win it, it means we're still in it. We're still in this fight. And what you said in the intro there, the answer is yes, we could.
We could. I genuinely believe we can, because, you know, we're debating whether or not a penalty incident like that galvanised them. Earlier in the season, that finished us.
Yeah,
earlier in the season, a sending off and a penalty against us, 1-0 down after we started quite well, because we started quite well in a lot of those rubbish games where we got hammered. But they didn't. They stuck at it, and they're doing things that they weren't doing before. And we'll get into where the turning point has been and whether it is really a turning point. But Woody, you'll have examined that game with perhaps a more detached tactical sense than Justin had in the away end after drinking cans on a National Express bus on the way down. What was your what's your overall impression of that performance?
Well, to be fair, it's still a little bit early here. I feel like I've done a National Express just by walking down the stairs. But all told, it was something else, wasn't it? That come on, let's be fair. That's going to rank up there as being one of the better Premier League results Burnley's had by quite a distance, because it wasn't a scabby little, backs against the wall and hope for, a 0-0, etc. We've gone behind twice and come back from behind twice, which is quite an effort. That would have been an effort just a month ago with 11 men, let alone 10. And so it was an impeccable performance in a lot of respects. And I think the thing that summed it up for me was just before Dara O'Shea's goal, when they honed in on him and the camera, and he had that sweat of those pasty white guys who aren't quite thick enough on a Sunday morning, and they've gone completely white and they piss wet through, and he's put an absolute shift in. And that's been the difference in a lot of respects, especially yesterday, that we've gone from this bunch of lads who thought they were a bunch of Paolo Maldinis, to now we've turned into a bunch of Colin Hendricks. We've just got a little bit tougher with it. We're throwing things in, where we shouldn't, where we probably wasn't doing earlier in the season. And it was, it was very heartening to see. Let's put it that way. It was a great performance, I thought.
Oh yeah, his face after he banged that header in from that corner. I mean, he had that. Yeah. I don't know. I can't describe it without swearing, really. But he had that fucking get in there look on his face, we're not dead here. We're fighting back, and that's when we look back on the things that we said after that Arsenal home game, which I think was the turning point, really. When we look back at them, we said we don't like this team. They've got no fight, they've no character. They're a bunch of mercenaries, and so on and so forth. And they've totally transformed from that. They're totally transformed, aren't they? I mean, individual wise, you do get a feeling of that from an away, and even if you can't see the game tactically the way you could do sat in the director's box or even watching TV. But individual wise, who did you leave the ground feeling particularly proud of, Justin?
I think the way Cullen's turned his season round after having so long out and slotting back into that midfield and running games again like he was doing last season. I think that's been a massive difference. Apart from that, obviously Muric is making a big difference. I mean, there was a spell where after J-Rod came on where he was hitting him with throws over the halfway line.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So accurate. I mean, J-Rod couldn't. I mean, he did really well, I think, when he came on. He held the ball up really well, rarely gave it away, was a real sort of outlet when we were under a little bit of pressure later on. But I think Muric and Cullen coming back into the side has made a massive difference and has raised the level of everybody. I was a bit. I think we'll probably talk about this a little bit. The team selection again, I think, was a bit weird. I think dropping Charlie Taylor and bringing Amdouni back in was a very odd thing to do. It did give us that little opportunity to make the sacrifice after the sending off without actually affecting the balance of the team. But I wonder whether he was just worried about a little bit about Chelsea's pace and thought that Charlie Taylor might struggle and that Vitinho and Assignon might be a bit of a better bet. But then you're sacrificing a lot by bringing Amdouni in defensively, aren't you? I would have thought that Goodmanson would have been a much better bet for that if that was your worry. But I've forgotten the question now. Still so excited about it.
No, there was no question. No, I mean, I'm doing it when it went off. It really
made no difference. I didn't even know he was playing. I'll be honest.
I mean, he looked a bit lost out there, didn't he? And he meant Odegaard had to move into that central role. They played it that way, didn't they? Most of the time, it seemed. They interchanged a little bit, but Odegaard's a lot more effective when he's out left. He's going to give a fullback some hard time, isn't he? And he did do a little bit, but yeah, it meant when we changed it didn't massively alter things. But Muric, I mean, somebody on Twitter put a tweet out in response to something we put up and just went, Muric was world class. And I thought that's a ridiculous hyperbole. But you know what? I thought about it, and he might not, he isn't world class, but that was a world class performance.
Some fantastic saves.
He just made a ton of brilliant saves. His distribution, I mean, that throwing it out right onto his head. Not only did he do it, I mean, I don't think there'll be another goalkeeper who could throw it beyond the halfway line, apart from maybe Peter Schmeichel in his heyday.
Yeah.
But to throw it not just like down the wing for somebody, but right onto Jay's head, were unbelievable. But Woody, who impressed you particularly, apart from Britain's second favourite Kosovan, and who else impressed you?
I'm wholeheartedly in agreement with what's just been said there. And it's like that turnaround with Cullen is quite astonishing, really, because especially considering how we said he wasn't capable, he wasn't up to the Premier League when he'd been left out. And it's like there hasn't been any, what's he learned since then? Had he got a little bit of a knock? Or is it a case whereby he's come in and because Muric is there, being able to play that second quarterback role, it takes a lot of pressure off him having to come a lot deeper and having to play these blind balls that he's not as proficient as with it in the Premiership. But I think Vitinho, this little role that he's starting to play further up the pitch, and he's a little bit more of a kind of a ratty good Monson, isn't he? He's scurrying across and getting himself in there. And I mean, it was a shame that we didn't quite have Fofana down there. I think he would have been an interesting proposition yesterday.
Yeah, because Foster were a bit off it. Well, he looked like he was short of match fitness, really, didn't he?
Yeah, but I think all told, what we've said there have impressed. Definitely impressed yesterday.
Credit to two centre halves, I think, as well.
Yes,
Steve and O'Shea were pretty rock-like back there for most of the time. I thought, with Raheem Sterling to thank for missing that sitter as well, haven't we?
Yes,
we shouldn't forget that.
But I mean, we had our chances to win it as well. You said Foster had a bad game, but he did have a decent chance. And then J-Rod hit the bar, didn't he, with that head? If that had gone in, Jesus Christ, I think I would be. I don't think I'd still be. My heart would not have withstood that.
You'd still be in London now, wouldn't you?
We'd be there all weekend. You'd never see us again. I think what's really interesting, though, look at although obviously I can't analyze the game in any way, but if you think about the stats, we conceded. Their second goal was class, wasn't it? There was nothing we could do about that. It was a high quality move. Their first goal shouldn't have even happened. And we've scored two great goals, one direct from a corner, which we never do. We've conceded, I'm just looking at the list here, we've conceded 12 corners in that game and not conceded a goal, just by the law of averages based on our stats for the rest of the season. At least two of them should have gone in. So we've turned around a lot of the things that we were doing wrong. And we didn't make any daft, stupid defensive mistakes. Even when Muric went walkabout a bit, and I saw him in the right back position. I'm thinking, what the fuck is he doing there? But what he's got that Trafford doesn't have is that decisiveness, isn't it?
Yes.
He just belted it into the crowd and ran back into his goal.
Yeah.
Trafford had been halfway there and halfway back, and that's what I think that is a significant factor to his game, his decisiveness. When he decides to go and take the ball out, he goes and takes it out, doesn't he? And he doesn't mess about.
Yeah, my wife actually watched a bit of the match yesterday with me, which is a very, very rare event. And once she was struggling to cope with the idea that a manager can be sent off. She's like, well, he's not on the field, which is a fair point in a way. Yeah. But also, but also she's like, who's this goalkeeper like? You know, she's like, are they allowed to run out all over the field? Yes, they are. But no, you're right. We're doing a lot of things that we weren't doing, I think, aren't we? I mean, Woody, there's little things all over the field that, you know, we're not fanning about with it at the back.
Exactly.
We're playing it out nicely. And is that Cullen and Muric? Is that what they bring? The ball out it'll get moving fast. With that endless backwards and passing it around isn't happening, is it?
No, exactly. I mean, Muric is primarily responsible for that. He very rarely makes a bad decision, and it's most of the time a first-time ball, and a lot of the time it's an impeccable ball that nobody else in the side could probably play. And what we'd been struggling with was, you know, this indecisiveness from the back and playing too deep, and then playing these weird little chip balls long, which was very easy for, you know, whoever was defending just to like dink it back and away we go, and we're under pressure again. Whereas now this element of transition isn't happening. They're still on the back foot from defending, etc. And, you know, we're able to break the lines more or less straight from Muric, which is what we were doing in the Championship last year, which does beg the question as to why did it take us this long to work this out if we knew that this would be an outcome?
Oh, yeah,
you know,
it
but
does.
that might be a question to ask at some point if it does all go to shit. You know.
Yeah, I mean, we put a poll up on our Twitter feed asking people where they think we would be in the league if Muric had been playing all season, and you know, it's unkind perhaps in some respects, but I'm just looking at it. There's 5 hours left on it still, but it's pretty clear who. It's the three choices were comfortable mid-table, 21.1% went for that option. Bottom half but better, 68.6%. And 10% of people say it would be about the same. I think bottom half but better as well. I think, I don't think, you know, again, you know, it's that age-old debate about Trafford, isn't it? He didn't make huge amount of clangers, but just everything else is working better. It was the Joe Hart moment. We were speculating, would it be a Joe Hart moment? It looks now like it was the Joe Hart moment. Everything else is working better. You know, it's not all because of Muric, but something, you know, like Woody was saying, the way we play out from the back. But the spirit as well. I mean, that Arsenal game, there was embarrassingly bad because of the lack of effort and work rate, which we slammed them for, quite rightly. And then the next game was West Ham, wasn't it? And that was decent at West Ham. I've not forgotten the game, have I? It was West Ham, next one.
Yeah.
And that was a decent effort. And then we've won a game, and then we've gone, I think, the best performance of the season, you know.
Yeah.
What do we reckon has happened? I mean, obviously Muric coming back in, but there's the total attitude change as well, and the belief that's in the team. What could possibly have happened there, or is it just results breed belief?
I think, well, we've also brought in 3 new players and tweaked it a little bit up front, and I think we've decided that we've got to play a little bit further up top. But I think Assignon, Fofana, obviously Cullen, Vitinho. Playing
Steve
further exactly, and Steve. There's, you know, that there's some good characters there, I think, especially in Fofana and Assignon, and also some quality players, and that's going to just pick you up that little bit more, isn't it? But we've also changed the way we're playing a little bit, you know, and I think we're a little bit more solid and defending better from up top and not losing the ball quite as easily as we were doing. And I think we're starting to see some dividends as well.
Justin, what's your feelings on that?
I agree. I think Muric has made a difference to the way the performances have panned out. But we stayed in games better than we were doing before, and that's not necessarily down to him. I think the points deduction for other teams has made it a difference as well. We're not down and out. We're kind of still in touch and still in with a chance. And when you're still in with a chance, when you've got something to fight for, then there's a reason to do it, isn't there? Whereas, you know, without these points deductions, I think at this stage we would all be conceding that it's the end. So all these things combined, aren't they? Also, like these guys must have a sense of professional pride and think to themselves, well, we come into the end of the season and thoughts start turning to what's going to happen in the close season. A lot of them are still playing for careers, aren't they? So that has to come into play as well. But you got to hand it to company, haven't you? You've got to say, well, whatever he's doing, he has long since held that we are the balance between us doing really well and doing really poorly is not quite is much smaller than we think it is. And maybe that balance is just with the new signings, with the incentive due to the points deduction, due to Muric coming back in, we're stringing together, a couple of decent performances. Maybe that balance has just started to tip in the way he said it would do. It's a shame it didn't happen 10 games ago, but, we've got a lifeline here, haven't we? And we've got to keep going and keep thinking, well, it's up for grabs now. And I have to say, for the first time in a long time, I'm really looking forward to going to Turf Moor on Tuesday night.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is small margins and things do sort of were drifting. They were drifting because drifting so much that I forgot we played Crystal Palace and Bournemouth after the Arsenal game.
Well, we were agreeing with you, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. But I think that's because they were just such bad performances that merged in with the rest of them. The West Ham was the one where we suddenly started looking like we had something about us, didn't we? And then we beat Brentford and we've got a draw at Chelsea. And looking at the fixtures coming up, let's have a look at what we've got coming up, because obviously Tuesday's a game that, I mean, they're all must wins now, aren't they?
Every game's a must win, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's only two. Well, possibly three on the list that you'd think, well, that's going to be that there's no chance there. But I mean, if you're looking at the way United played last night, we could easily, if we go to Old Trafford and play like we did last, at Chelsea, we've got every chance there. Newcastle, they've not had a brilliant season, have we? We've got them at home. Spurs that could go either way as well. But the rest of them are all winnable if we carry on doing what we're doing.
Yeah, with 3 6-pointers, haven't we? And Notts Forest is starting to loom a little bit spicy, isn't it? That could be quite the end of a season extravaganza.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot gets determined this week, really. Burnley, Wolves, and then Everton, Burnley. Everton are in a dreadful run of form, aren't they? If we can take the momentum from the performance at Stamford Bridge into the Wolves game, get 3 points then, and then turn over Everton, then it's looking good. There will still be some people who think we're being wildly optimistic here, thinking that we've got a chance. But if we can win these 2 games this week, we 100% have a chance. 100%. I mean,
yeah, and I'm nowhere near as negative about it as I would have been 3 or 4 weeks ago. Nowhere near as negative as I would be going into these games. Like they've shown something at Stamford Bridge that we haven't seen, and if we can keep that spirit going, and that being in that situation, facing that adversity, knowing that even down to 10 men, you can pull it back and you can get something out of a game. That is the thing that builds that confidence, isn't it? That is the thing that on the field, when the players are facing these moments, they think back to that. Well, we've done this before. We know where we are. We know how to play. We know how to do this. So they'll probably make us eat his words again. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. But having seen that, I just think that it feels like something's happening, doesn't it?
I agree 100% with that. Because this weekend, I would much rather be us coming out of it than either Sheffield United or Luton. Luton keep coming with these little plucky performances, but they're all well and good if they get turned around into defeats. If we've come back twice with 10 men against Chelsea, then I think that's a far better sign than keep, just getting a point out of winning positions. I think the momentum's with us, definitely.
That's bad for your confidence, isn't it? That's when you're winning and you lose late on. That's bad for your confidence. What we did on Saturday, even though we didn't get 3 points, that's a booster. That gives you resilience and ammunition for when your backs are against the wall in future games.
And it looks like we're hitting our best form and our best streak of results just as we're going into the absolute crunch of the season when it all gets decided. When silly stuff start happening, when teams start wobbling and everybody else starts falling aside. If this is our little run that we were due at some stage in the season, let's hope the little run isn't 3 games, but it's really encouraging. And also, big picture, when we said, look, if we're going to go down, let's go down the right way. So even if you would think if we can keep this spirit going and everything, at least if the worst does happen, it's not going down the way we looked like we were going to go down 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of also as well, I thought the substitutions from Company, we've slammed them all year and we've said he's got things wrong. Why did he do that? Why did he do that? I thought his substitutions, if it was him doing it and not Craig Bellamy, were absolutely spot on. I thought all of them were. And even the J-Rod, as we said, Goodmanson coming on, he's a great player. If you're not going to start Goodmanson, he's a great player for closing out a game, isn't he?
Was he playing? I don't know. No idea what the substitutions were. I did say, oh look, J-Rod's playing, but I had no idea where he came from.
What was the bus trip like back then? Because you were worried about facing 5.5 hours after a tubbing at Stamford Bridge. What was it like?
It was all right. It was a bit. It's 5.5 hours from Victoria to Manchester, so it is a bit of a drag, especially when you've been up at like 6 o'clock in the morning to get the coach down there in the first place. And also, my son, who joined me on the trip, is a Manchester United fan, I have to admit, and he was watching the game on his phone, and that put a bit of a damper on it for him, but not for me.
It lifts everyone, though, doesn't it? It's one of them funny things about football that, like, no matter how older you get and how more experienced in life you get, your mood over a weekend still does get impacted, doesn't it? Like the amount of pissed off Saturday, for us, it's Saturday afternoon after watching a Saturday morning game, and it just ruins your Saturday. But when it works the other way, it's great, isn't it? I got up this morning and I went out for a walk with a spring in my step. The sun's shining, it's
the sun's come out because Burnley made a draw at Chelsea yesterday.
That's exactly.
Yeah, it does make. I mean, I got to the point. I think I'm not alone in this, where I was sort of trying quite hard not to care too much about it because it was just so awful that I would have had to have been hospitalised at some point if I'd given into the depression that was, descending on things this season. Just the way it's been kind of really, the way it's panned out, and we've kind of been struggling to explain a lot of things that have happened, struggling to understand even why certain decisions have been taken. So yeah, I know what you mean. It does make a big difference when things turn the other way, and you do. But then spring's on the way. That makes a big difference. When it's not dark, when you get up in the morning, that makes a big difference as well, doesn't it? But yeah, that coming back from the game yesterday, there was a sense of real. I think I've talked about this before. That righting of a wrong, that moment when Dara O'Shea's goal went in was directly after a moment where an individual in the Chelsea end right next to us was engaging in some top level shithousery with his Chelsea scarf in our direction. And no amount of telling him where to go or what he was dissuading him from, giving us what for. Every single member of the crowd, after they'd celebrated with Dara Shays, he ran towards us, turned to that guy, pointed at him and told him, that's the wrong. The wrong has been righted. He didn't make a peep. He didn't make a peep for the rest of the game. But yeah, let's talk about that penalty though. I was quite close to it. It was quite in front of me, and I was like, "There's no way that's a penalty." He barely touched him. Mudryk threw his hands up in the air and threw himself to the ground dramatically, and I was like, I can see how he's been conned into that, but VAR's going to make him look at that again. But what if you're not going to do that in a situation like that? I mean, what's the point of VAR? Why do we even have it? I think if he'd asked the ref to go and have a look at it again, he would have seen that he'd been conned, and overturned it, and then then the game's 11 against 11. But
that's what should have happened. That's what should have happened, because the problem with it is when it goes to offside VAR looking at it, and they're being told that it has to be a clear and obvious error. Right? That hasn't changed. It has to be a clear and obvious error. And the referee's made a call that he's pulled him down, right? And they're looking at some video footage that shows his hand on his shoulder, and then he goes down. Now, we can all see it, and it's quite obvious that he did not push him to the floor. He just leant on him slightly, and he's gone down, and he's dived, basically. Yeah. But by the letter of what they're told to do, the VAR people, they're looking at it and going, is that a clear and obvious? Because his hand is on him, like the ref's judged him. He's seen that contact. The ref's obviously seen that contact. They're seeing it at VAR. So they're going to say, yeah, there was contact there. But what they should be doing is saying to him, but not sure it was enough. You might want to have a look at that again. And the ref then gets a chance to make his judgment on it, but they don't. They don't send him to the thing. So I don't blame them for strictly within the remit that they're given, not overturning it, because it's not a clear and obvious error in the sense that the contact was made. But there should be, and it's a problem with the system, there should be a way they can say, you know what, yeah, there is contact, but you might want to have a look at it again. But does that leave us in a situation where VAR is just re-refereeing everything? I don't know. But Woody, what do you think of it?
I think you've summed it up perfectly there, Simon. And I think it's probably time just to say, well, you might as well get rid. I'd rather see that cock up in real time and not have to go through it and be gaslit constantly by VAR decisions that simply just don't make any sense, and nobody else can make sense out of them, irrespective of what the letter of the law may be or not. It's like, just bin it. I'd rather feel hard done to properly than hard done to twice in slow motion.
No, I know what you mean, because
it's a good way of putting it.
In the past, you just go, oh, it's con the ref, and that's it.
Yeah.
And now you're like, well, how can they look at that and not see that he's con the ref? Yeah. No, I agree.
I think it was pretty obvious. The question in my mind is the contact. The question in my mind is it the contact that makes Mudryk go to the ground?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's not, is it? That's not why he went over. He went over because in that split second, he made the smart decision that he'd completely lost control of the ball.
I think he'd lost his balance a bit as well. He was on his way down.
It's Mudryk. Yeah.
Asignon had defended that situation quite well, I thought. You do see him put an arm across. He got himself in a decent position. And Mudryk just thought, well, the only thing I can do is throw myself to the ground and hope for the best. The contact did not initiate the fall. And that, to me, is the big question. And if VAR is not there to, distinguish between, that and an actual foul, then what's the point of it? I was really baffled when Howard Webb, who I think is in charge of this thing, isn't he, the VAR?
The PGMOL, yeah.
When he said, well, we knew when this came in that there were going to be objective decisions to be made, and one ref might give it and one ref might not give it. And I just think, well, that means it's pointless, isn't it? It's absolutely pointless, because if you've got a difference of opinion between the ref and the VAR ref, then who wins? The guy who's on the pitch, obviously. They always defer to his decision. So VAR becomes pointless unless you can make it only about decisions that aren't subjective. But even the offside ones, sometimes you can watch it 1,000 times and you can't really tell whether he's an inch behind him or an inch in front of him.
Exactly.
I think I'm with you, buddy. I just think get rid of it, because the whole point of it was they said it will make the decisions more accurate. I do not believe it has done that. I think what it's done is just taken that controversy off the pitch and into the VAR box, which has amplified it 1,000 times, because we are told that they're expected to get it right in there. And there's been so many times they haven't got it right that it makes you think, what's the point in doing it in the first place? It's made referees, assistant referees, what does VAR stand for? Virtual assistant referee.
Video assistant referee.
Video assistant referee. Right. It's made all those people even bigger characters in the game where from my point of view, the best referees are the ones you don't even notice are there, the ones where you just focus on the game and nothing they do impacts the outcome. It's all about the players on the pitch. And we've gone so far away from that. The referees even have their own show on Sky talking about the decisions they've made. We're not interested in that. We want to see the football. Do you know what I mean?
I was against it right from the start on basically a philosophical level, if you like, really, because the idea is that you can perfect decision making in a sport like football, and I just don't think you can. It's an impossible task. There's going to be mistakes made. It's a fast-moving game. You've got people in physical combat with each other on a field, and you've got people who also cheat all the time, which is just the reality of it, and it's totally undermined the authority of the referees on the field because everyone knows that the referee's decision is not final. You were taught that as an 8-year-old playing junior school football. The ref's decision is final. Shut up. Yeah. Get on with it. Yeah. It's no longer the final. Officially, the authorities of football decided that the referee's decision is no longer final. But you can't perfect it. You cannot, because that Mudryk incident is a perfect example of how you can't, because you can sit there in Switzerland at IFAB and go, and you can't lay hands on your opponent in the penalty area. You could do whatever adjustments to the rules. And because of VAR, we've been adjusting the rules every 6 months anyway, which we didn't need to be doing if we hadn't been in this position. But it still comes down to exactly what you're saying, Justin. Yes, you can. How can you write a rule that covers whether a push was strong enough to knock somebody over? You can't create a rule. You can't put it down in black and white. So you've got to give the power of interpreting what he sees with his eyes to a referee. Now, do you have some sort of minor backup system where somebody can go to the ref when he's missed something clearly? I think perhaps you could have had it for something like if somebody lamps somebody and it's behind the ref's back, and you can go, hey, he just smacked him in the head, and you've completely, you couldn't possibly see it. But even if you did that, you'd have people start talking about, oh, well,
That's what the linesman's for, though, isn't it? The linesman's are the referee's eyes on the parts of the pitch that he can't see. I mean, I think it works in instances like, is the ball over the line? Because that is a black and white scenario. And
that's automated, isn't it? Anyway.
The technology is actually able to produce an accurate result on that, seemingly 100% of the time. I don't think there's been any controversy about that. So do that. I mean,
once when it didn't work, when the technology broke down, there was one, wasn't there?
When the technology didn't work. But I mean, I don't know about offsides. They seem to get right more often than they get wrong. So maybe, but even that, as I said before, it can be quite subjective. It can be quite difficult. The technology doesn't seem to be quite there to make it so that you can really have a black and white decision all the time on that. But these foul things, I mean, it also looks different, doesn't it, when you see it from the different angles? You can watch an incident, and from one angle it looks a clear foul, and then from another angle you can see, it doesn't look like he's touched him, and then you go, well, which angle is the truth? How do you make that decision? I just think it's just made thing, and it's slowed the game down. This thing where, when you're in the stadium, they don't show you the replays that everyone's looking at on the TV. So you're in the dark about what's actually happening. What are they looking at? Sometimes they don't even announce what they're doing,
But the fact not seeing the replays is a good thing in a way, I think. And it's part of the problem is that before they brought in VAR, people like Sky and the broadcasters across Europe, I mean, in Italy, it was ridiculous. We had a TV show on Monday night, which was an hour-long show, which before VAR existed, which was basically an hour-long VAR, where they went through every controversial decision and go, it got wrong, Juve were robbed, and, and all this, just absolutely destroying the refs all the time. And TV's allowed that to happen. But it doesn't always happen in other sports. This is what, in American sports, you watch NFL as well, Woody, they get stuff wrong there sometimes.
Yes.
And the commentators will look at it and go, you know what, I think that were a fair catch there. They should have been given that 10-yard advance or whatever. But then they move on. They move on immediately. And after the match is over, the game is over, they might mention it once. They don't have Gary Neville and Roy Keane sat there going on for half an hour about how it was an injustice. And they've got the technology, but they just move on, and the fans move on. You don't get these constant debates. And the sport is, football's a lot better game than American football. But I do like that part of American sport and American football where they just don't go on about it. They just move on. Ref made a mistake, fine. That happens. The coaches never go there. The coaches in their post-match press conferences will say, yeah, he's made the decision, so we've got to get on with that. And that's it. Just like there's an agreement not to do that.
But the interesting thing is that they aren't quite the same types of game-changing decisions, are they? It's not like it's every single either field goal or touchdown, etc., is being checked, and there's obviously more potential scores. So with obviously soccer, these moments are the key moments within games that are going to win or lose or whatever, and it's a lot more life and death in that regard, isn't it? So I think that's probably the reason why American sport can sometimes let it ride a little bit more.
And we're never going to go to an era where Sky Sports says, you know what, we'll just let them decisions to pass. We're not going to do that. There's nothing we can do. We can't, reinvent television.
I'd say one decision that was definitely wrong was that in the concourse at halftime at Stamford Bridge, the penalty incident was replayed over and over and over again, probably about 25, 30 times in the time when me and the boy were having a couple of pints.
Really?
That did not help Chelsea in the second half, because after you'd seen it 25 times and you're still convinced it's a penalty and it shouldn't have been a sending off, you're a little bit more riled up than you would have been if you weren't, quite sure. So I think
£7 for a can of London Pride, and you have to watch an unjust penalty against us 25 times while you're queuing up to be ripped off.
Yeah, but it made it a bit more intense in that second half. I think everybody having seen it so many times. I think what Bellamy said about the players being galvanised at half time by the injustice of it, I think there was a bit of that going on there as well in the crowd. So
did the players come over at the end and everything?
Yeah, they did. There was a bit of a communal celebration at the end. So obviously Vincent Kompany didn't appear, but I'm sure he would have liked to have. I quite like he's not said anything about it yet, hasn't he? Because I think he's probably going to measure his words, and I'm hoping that when he does speak about it, he speaks about it as powerfully as he has done in the past. Because he did get caught up in the heat of the moment. There was a bit of argy-bargy on the touchline there with the assistant referee. But it's career at this stage. It's career-defining moments, isn't it? It's for him. It's like relegation or staying or keeping a side in the Premier League. This is a career-defining moment for him, which will have a massive impact on what goes on in the future. So I'm not at all surprised that he was so angry. But I do like that he's taking his time, and hopefully there'll be a measured and an articulate response from him. And I am looking forward to hearing what he's got to say about it.
Yeah, he'll be talking before the Wolves game, perhaps, unless they did the pre-match press conference after the post-match one. But they do that sometimes. But big one, Wolves on Tuesday. Is this run going to continue? Last thing before we retire to our blissful Sunday, basking in the satisfaction of a draw at Stamford Bridge. Can we keep it going? Wolves, are they a team that we're capable of beating at Turf Moor, Woody?
I think Wolves are an infinitely better side than Chelsea.
Right, great.
There you go. But I think a result against Wolves definitely shows that we are moving in the right direction. I think a Wolves result, even 11 against 11.
Result, does that mean a draw?
It does mean a draw. Yeah, that'd be a very good point. Yeah, they're beatable, of course they are. But I still think they're a far better side than Chelsea.
Justin Fofana will be back for that. He couldn't play against Chelsea because
Yeah,
his own
I think
plan.
it'll make a difference. But obviously we'll be missing Assignon, won't we? So I think that will make a bit of a difference as well, because I think he's had a bit of an impact. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, if we play like we do against Chelsea, we'll give ourselves a chance. If we don't give away stupid goals and we take the chances that we will almost certainly create, then why not? And I think if we do that, if we do play as like we did against that Chelsea in the first half, when we were still 11 against 11, and in the second half when we showed that steel and determination, I think there's every chance we can get a result.
There is, and we'll be back to talk about it, hopefully with Chris Bowden and Andrew Greaves back with us after their weekend commitments kept them off air on this celebratory episode of From the BOL. And it's been a refreshing change to have that feeling. It really has, on the podcast as well as over the weekend. Thanks very much for listening to us. Follow us on social media, of course, at BHole Podcast. We'll speak to you during the week, and until then, up the Clarets.
Jimmy McElroy to Watson. Go.